Hi, my name is Armando Fox. I am a computer science professor whose research is on computer science education and software engineering. I'm going to tell you about a transformational opportunity for Berkeley engineering in the form of computer-based testing. Computer-based testing can mean different things to different people, so let's clarify what we mean here. Do we mean that the exams are entirely multiple choice questions where students fill in bubbles on a sheet? Certainly not. Effective examinations in STEM have to go substantially beyond selected response. Does it mean that the students all take an exam at the same time in a room full of computers? Well, it could mean that, but in this scenario, we mean something a lot more flexible, where students don't have to take the exam at the same time. In fact, it's a scenario that is pretty well suited for remote learning. Do we mean adaptive testing, in which the questions automatically get easier or harder depending on how the student is performing? Not right away, but the technology that I'm about to describe that we're working on can be adapted to include adaptive testing in the future. Do we mean webcam-based remote proctoring, where students are taking remote exams while turning on their webcams or their cell phones? No, what we're describing is a technology that is completely independent of that and has to do with how we can create exams that in an ideal world would make proctoring largely unnecessary. And finally, is this only a technology for remote exams? No, in fact, as I'll describe, that's not where we started from when we began developing this project. But we quickly came to find out that it is an ideal ingredient for dealing with the remote learning situation in which we find ourselves. Let's get right into it with an example of what we mean when we talk about bringing computer-based testing to Cal. This student is taking an online exam in their browser, and the exam question asks them to write a regular expression to pick out only the digits in each string of characters. The student enters their proposed solution, which I'm sure you'll recognize from when you studied this topic, but when the student clicks Save and Grade, alas, their answer is wrong. If they scroll down, they see feedback showing that their answer works for 2 of the 3 cases, but not the 3rd case, and the student can see the correct solution. On a regular exam, the student would simply miss this question. But what if we could instead give the student a new, different question that calls for the same skills but requires a different answer? Or we might ask the student to create a program that draws these beautiful recursive figures called fractals. Each student can be given a slightly different problem generated randomly at the moment that particular student takes the exam. In each of these cases, the instructor didn't just author an exam question, but a question generator that creates new question variants on demand and gives the student immediate feedback on their answer. That's the key idea, from questions to question generators. So what could you do if you had question generators? If administering exams is easy because every exam is slightly different, you can administer them more frequently. You can give many short quizzes instead of a few killer exams, which is great for student wellness and stress reduction. But at the University of Illinois, where they've been doing this for several years, they found that it also leads to better retention. In addition to fewer D's and F's at the end of the course, they had significantly more A's at the end of the course. It removes incentives for students who might be tempted to cheat. If you know the person next to you has an exam slightly different from yours, copying the answers doesn't make any difference. You still have to know how to solve the questions. In fact, second chance exams for when students do have a bad day become much easier to administer, as do makeup exams. You can even give students the opportunity to practice in advance by allowing them to use the same question generators on homework assignments. What all of these have in common is proficiency-based learning, allowing students to practice material repeatedly until they master it. We say that repeated practice shifts the curve towards student proficiency, and that's good for equity because students who come in with variable preparation will use varying amounts of practice using the question generators and get to a point where, in principle, everybody should be able to get an A in that course. We started piloting this with partners at Cal State Long Beach and El Camino College in the LA area, and we initially expected that 2 to 3 courses would be sufficient for a pilot. In fact, we have been working on creating content for 6 courses in engineering. We expected that we might write 50 or so question generators for those courses. In fact, we've created over 190. We thought a small dry run of a quiz or an exam would be ambitious over the summer. In fact, we've run a midterm with over 1,100 students taking the exam remotely and reacting very positively to the experience. And where we thought 6 to 10 student teachers might sign up to learn how to create content in this system, we've had over 30 of some of our best. Part of our pilot, although somewhat unexpected, was that we were able to give a remote midterm exam, a 48-hour take-home, in a course enrolling over 1,000 students. Let me give you examples of some of the positive responses that we got. One student said, and I quote, "I found it to be the best remote exam experience I've had this semester in terms of reducing test-taking related stress and anxiety as much as possible, allowing me to really focus on the material and learn it to the best of my ability." Now, as an instructor, that's the kind of comment that brings joy to my heart, because this is the reason that we're here. When a student says that an assessment has allowed them to really focus on learning the material and demonstrating their knowledge, we feel like that's a success for everyone. Another student said, "For once, I felt like an exam actually helped me understand everything better and tested me on that, rather than testing my ability to cram." Indeed, you should get the idea by now that one thing you can do with question generators is give students plenty of practice. If students can have plenty of practice and even have the ability to take parts of an exam multiple times and receive different questions, then the idea of cramming kind of becomes useless, because the student knows they'll have opportunities over and over again to demonstrate their mastery of the material until they get it right. As I mentioned, although this technology seems to be an ideal fit for remote learning, that's not where this project started. In fact, the project began because we really wanted to bring the idea of mastery learning and more equitable learning to all of our students. Indeed, when we submitted a proposal to the state of California to get seed funding for this project, one of our cover letters said that the project offered significant benefits for campus resilience in support of our educational mission. That letter was signed by Kathy Koshland, the Vice Chancellor for Undergraduate Education, as well as by our Executive Director for Research, Teaching, and Learning and our campus CIO. Now, I mentioned that mastery learning has a really important equity angle for us. And in fact, it's not just the students who have had less preparation for our courses that benefit in this regard from mastery learning. It's also a tremendous boon to students with disabilities. In fact, the executive director of our Disabled Students Program, Karen Nielsen, also provided a cover letter for our proposal in which she said that a program like this would greatly increase the already heavily taxed resources of the Disabled Students Program and provide much more flexibility for the students that they serve. That's because in an exam format where not all students have to take it at the same time, and where individual students' exam times, administrations, and other accommodations can be automatically accounted for, a tremendous amount of work is lifted from the already pressured staff in the Disabled Students Program. The support for the project began with some seed funding from the Office of Vice Chancellor for Undergraduate Education, Kathy Koshland, and was quickly recognized as valuable when the College of Engineering committed $75,000 to enable as many courses as possible to improve the remote learning experience. That allowed us to write a proposal to the Governor's Office of the State of California under a new program called the California Education Learning Lab. That proposal has funded the work at UC Berkeley, as well as our collaborators, Cal State University at Long Beach and El Camino Community College in Los Angeles. And now we're seeking support from you to move beyond the pilot phase and scale this program up to the level of all of the departments in the College of Engineering. Our transformational vision is for a center focused on proficiency-based learning for both exams and homeworks. It's difficult for instructors to learn to think in terms of creating question generators, and for the student teachers who help us develop our exams to learn how to develop essentially automatic question generators that will work within this system. We have to integrate with other student-facing systems, such as course enrollments, to integrate with systems that understand students with disabilities, who, for example, may be allotted extra time on an exam. And someday, when we're allowed to have nice things again and be back on campus, we're hoping to open testing centers with trained proctors so that on-campus exams can work alongside remote exams. We think this is a transformational opportunity for UC Berkeley, and on behalf of my co-PIs and the very talented students who are helping getting us off the ground, I look forward to your support on this very important campus effort.